You are welcome to this presentation on developing your child safeguarding procedures and child safeguarding statement, which is being provided by your local Children and Young People Services Committee, CYPSC. My name is Sandra Claxton Tusla, Children First Information and Advice Officer. The aim of this information session is to assist you to develop your child safeguarding procedures. I will briefly be outlining the requirements for a child safeguarding statement, but for more detailed information on writing this document, we have produced another short PowerPoint called Introduction to a Child Safeguarding Statement Template Information Session. Details are given at the end of this presentation. This document, Developing Child Safeguarding Procedures and a Child Safeguarding Statement, Guidance and Templates for Organisations or Groups Working with Children and Young People, has sample or templates for both child safeguarding procedures and a child safeguarding statement, and is available for your use. In this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the child safeguarding procedures that your organisation will need to have in place. But to start with, I will briefly outline the requirements for a child safeguarding statement, or as I will be calling it, a CSS. The Children First Act 2015 requires providers of relevant services to have a child safeguarding statement in place. This is a short document that your organisation or group will display publicly. If you employ one other person, whether through contract, voluntary arrangement or mutual agreement, this includes unpaid workers or volunteers who have regular and necessary access to children up to the age of 18, then you are a relevant service and need to have a CSS. Just to note, people working on their own, sole providers of activities or services, example, drama or music teachers, tutors, etc., do not have to have a child safeguarding statement, but still are required under Children First national guidance to have child safeguarding procedures. Templates and guidance specifically designed for sole providers has also been developed through CYPSC, and details are available at the end of this presentation. This section outlines a sample of guiding principles you are required to include in your CSS. These guiding principles should include areas such as ensuring the rights of children, having procedures in place to safeguard children, and ensuring equal access and respect for all young people involved in your activities. It is really important in drawing up your CSS risk assessment that you understand the definition of harm as outlined in the Act. Harm means in relation to a child, A, assault, ill treatment or neglect of the child in a manner that seriously affects or is likely to seriously affect the child's health, development or welfare, or B, sexual abuse of the child, whether caused by a single act, omission or combination of acts. So as you can see, risks that need to be identified are not health and safety risks. They are to do with situations where abuse of children during your activities could take place, for example, by your staff, volunteers, or others. It could also be, for example, risks associated with your staff or volunteers not knowing your reporting procedure and how to report a serious situation where a child is at risk. The following are some examples of the risks that would be in your CSS risk assessment. These are examples of the types of risks your organisation might outline in a child safeguarding statement, depending on your activities with young people. You need then to outline the procedures that would help your organisation manage those risks. So on the left side of the risk assessment, you would outline risks, for example, risk of harm of abuse of children by staff, volunteers, peers or visitors, risk of harm of abuse by staff or volunteers not knowing the correct procedure to safeguard children, risk of harm of abuse through the use of social media or digital images. These risks generally apply to all organisations that work with children. However, risk of harm of abuse while on an outing or overnight stay may not be included in your risk assessment unless you carry out those types of activities. As you can see, the table on the right outlines the procedures in place to manage identified risks. Some of the procedures are called specified procedures and are required by the Children First Act, and others are additional procedures. We're going to go through these now. So these are the 6 specified procedures which providers of relevant services are required to have in place under the Children First Act. These are procedures for allegations of abuse against staff volunteers, reporting procedures, selection and recruitment procedure, provision of information and training, procedure for maintaining a list of mandated persons, procedure for appointing a relevant person. Additionally, you are also required to have in place any additional procedures necessary to manage any risks identified in your risk assessment. The types of additional procedures you might have to manage identified risks are code of behaviour, social media and digital images, anti-bullying, outings or trips away, and supervision of children and young people, etc. So to get all these procedures and safeguarding practices in place, your organisation will have a number of key people. A relevant person is the first point of contact in relation to the CSS. They might also lead out on putting all your child safeguarding procedures together and ensure that everyone in the organisation knows about them. The name of the relevant person must be on the CSS so that anyone, for example, a young person, a parent, member of the public or TUSLA, can contact them to discuss your organisation's CSS and procedures if they have any concerns or queries. The provider of the relevant service is the person who is the employer of workers or volunteers in your organisation. Again, the term employer can relate to unpaid workers or volunteers. So, for example, a voluntary management committee for a sports organisation might have the chair of their committee outlined as the provider of the relevant service on the CSS. A designated liaison person, or DLP, is someone who has responsibility for child protection concerns and making sure that if reports have to go to TUSLA or the Gardaí, that they are made correctly. They are also a resource to anyone in the organisation who might have concerns about children they are working with. Mandated persons are classes of people named in the Children First Act who must make reports above a defined threshold of harm to TUSLA. For more information on mandated persons, there are details of a TUSLA e-learning program in the following slide. Just to note that in many organisations, one person might hold a number of these roles. The important thing is that people are clear about what their roles are and that your organisation implements all procedures that are developed. Remember, child safeguarding is the responsibility of the whole organisation and not just the people who have been given safeguarding roles. It is important to note that not all adults who work with children will be mandated persons. Consult Schedule 2 of the Children First Act 2015. If your role or profession is not listed in the schedule, this means you are not a mandated person under the Act. This, however, does not diminish your responsibility to follow your reporting procedures and report child protection and welfare concerns. The role and responsibility of mandated persons are outlined in the e-learning module, which is free of charge, is universally available and generates a certificate. See the link on this slide. So now we're going to look at a number of procedures that are required to safeguard young people. One of the most important ones is the reporting procedure, which is one of the 6 specified procedures outlined under the Children First Act. A template for all of the following procedures are outlined in the template and guidance document. So all workers and volunteers need to be aware of thresholds for reporting and the definitions of abuse. All of the following content is covered in the TUSLA e-learning program and Introduction to Children First. Organisations can ensure that all their workers or volunteers undertake this program as a minimum. Details on how to access this program will be available at the end of the presentation. Reasonable grounds for concern. This is the basis for making all reports to TUSLA under the Children First National Guidance. This is for all persons, including those mandated under the Act. Reasonable grounds exist when there is evidence, for example, an injury or behaviour that is consistent with abuse and is unlikely to have been caused in any other way. Any concern about possible sexual abuse, consistent signs that a child is suffering from emotional or physical neglect, a child saying or indicating by other means that he or she has been abused, admission or indication by an adult or a child of an alleged abuse they committed, an account from a person who saw the child being abused. If you think a child is in immediate danger and you cannot contact TUSLA, you should contact the Gardaí without delay. As we've already seen earlier, the legal definition of harm in the Children First Act is what a mandated person will use to decide if they are making a mandated report or a report of a reasonable ground for concern under the Children First guidance. As outlined earlier, the definition of harm in the Act is A. Assault, ill treatment or neglect of the child in a manner that seriously affects or is likely to seriously affect the child's health, development or welfare, or B. Sexual abuse of the child. This is the Child Protection and Welfare Report form. This can be filled out by your DLP, or if it is a mandated report, i.e. it meets the threshold outlined in the Act, it can be made by the mandated person, or they can jointly report with their DLP. Your reporting procedure needs to outline exactly what the agreed procedure is in this regard for your organisation. TUSLA encourages all reports to come to them through the use of the TUSLA portal. It is fast and more secure. You will need to set up an account. All DLPs should have an account. When making a report this way, you will receive an automatic acknowledgement of your report. Where a DLP, a mandated person, or anyone who has a concern about a child is not sure whether to make a report, they can look for informal consultation with TUSLA Social Work through contacting a local dedicated contact point. Informal consultation means looking for advice without identifying the name of the child or the family. An organisation should always know what their local contact point is for social work and have contact details written into their reporting procedure. Reports can also be made in person, by telephone or in writing. All dedicated contact points are available through following the link on the TUSLA website. There is also an out-of-hours contact number for mandated persons. The number is outlined in the slide. However, in an emergency, always contact the Gardaí. Allegations of abuse against staff, volunteers, for example, sexual abuse or physical abuse, is another one of the 6 specified procedures required by the Children First Act. There are 2 separate parallel procedures taking place, and the same person should not be responsible for both procedures. The reporting procedure above in green, which we have just gone through, outlines that a concern will be reported to the DLP, who will consult with TUSLA. Where advised, they will make a report to TUSLA and or the Gardaí. The allegations procedure needs to ensure that there is fair process where there is an allegation of abuse against a worker or volunteer. This is outlined in blue on the right. The concern will go to the employer, the chairperson, CEO, or HR person, whoever is named in your procedure. They may take protective measures such as asking someone to step aside pending the outcome of the investigation, also depending on the nature of the allegation. They must give the person against who the allegation has been made a right of reply. Liaison with TUSLA and the Gardaí would take place throughout the process, and parents would be kept fully informed of all actions taken. All stages of the process would be recorded. There are a number of components to a safe recruitment selection process, and these include having job and role descriptions, advertising the positions available, application and declaration forms, Garda vetting, and remembering that Garda vetting, while important, is no guarantee that someone is safe to work with children, interviews, references, evidence of identification, qualifications and experience, inductions for workers or volunteers, probationary and trial periods. All of these processes need to be carried out for a recruitment procedure to be effective and should apply to both volunteers and workers. Providing training and information for all of your workers and volunteers around child safeguarding is so important. Your organisation should make available induction training for all new workers, volunteers, or boards of management, in-house training on child safeguarding statement and procedures, child safeguarding training appropriate to specific roles and responsibilities, and at a minimum, all workers or volunteers should complete the TUSLA Introduction to Children First e-learning program, keeping records of all training undertaken. As noted earlier, providers of relevant services are required to have a procedure for maintaining a list of mandated persons in the organisation. This is one of the 6 specified procedures. So your procedure will outline who is responsible for maintaining the list, how your organisation will identify which members of staff are mandated persons, how you will inform mandated persons of their responsibilities, how you will add new people to the list, and how you will remove people from that list. Here is an example of part of the procedure for maintaining a list of mandated persons outlined in the Guidance and Templates document, which can be adapted for your use. Providers of relevant services are required to have a procedure for appointing a relevant person. This is another one of the 6 specified procedures. So your procedure will outline who is responsible for appointing the relevant person, who will inform the relevant person of their responsibilities, how is it communicated to staff, young people, parents, etc., who the relevant person is, and the process for appointing a new relevant person if someone leaves or if there's a change in circumstance. There is an example of this procedure for appointing a relevant person in the Guidance and Templates document. We're now going to look at safe management of activities. Having procedures for safe management of activities is key in terms of keeping children safe from harm. I'm going to outline some of the procedures that need to be in place when you're working with young people. A code of behaviour is so important in ensuring workers and volunteers are clear about what is acceptable and unacceptable in relation to their behaviour with young people. Recording of accidents and incidents can ensure that patterns are recognised where there may be risks to young people and that supervision levels are adequate to ensure their safety. Having supervision of children and young people procedure is so important. Only those who should have contact with children in your organisation should ever be facilitated to have contact with them. Interactions by workers and the young people themselves with each other should always be supervised, and there should always be appropriate levels of staff to ensure young people are safe. Anti-bullying procedures, working one-to-one with young people, and complaints procedures should also be in place. In relation to safe usage of social media and digital images, you need to develop guidance for both workers and young people in using ICT equipment. In relation to management of outings and trips away, pre-planning and informing parents and young people of what is expected is vital. Samples of these additional procedures are outlined in the Guidance and Template document mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. There may need to be other procedures in place specific to your organisation's activities. There is also more information available in TUSLA's Child Safeguarding, a guide for policy, procedure and practice, section 4.3, which is available on the TUSLA website. Outlined here are some examples of acceptable and unacceptable practice by workers or volunteers in relation to the Code of Behaviour. When you are developing a code of behaviour for your organisation, you should consider the nature of your service and age of the children and young people. Breaches of codes of behaviour, such as workers or volunteers meeting young people outside of agreed arrangements or inappropriate physical contact, can highlight that someone is potentially a risk to children or that the organisation needs to look at better training and supervision arrangements. Remember, breaches of the code must be linked to your disciplinary procedure. There are more examples of what to include in a code of behaviour in the Guidance and Templates document. In terms of implementing your child safeguarding policies and procedures, as we all know, written procedures must be put into practice. Step 1, it's important to review what you have in place, bringing your principles and your procedures in line with new legislation or guidance, or perhaps updating them in response to an issue within your organisation. I hope that the Guidance and Templates document will assist you with updating or putting in place new procedures. Step 2, in terms of implementing and operating your procedures. Outline who needs to be included to make sure everyone knows about and follows the procedures that have been developed. Step 3, review and evaluate. Take time to review how your procedures are working. Continue to monitor to ensure everyone in your service is still aware and following procedures. Are they still effective, and do they require amendment? Your CSS needs to be reviewed every 24 months, but all procedures and practices should be reviewed on a regular basis. On this slide is information about how to download the guidance and templates document that I have referred to throughout this presentation. Developing child safeguarding procedures and a child safeguarding statement, guidance and templates for organisations or groups working with children and young people. It is available on the CYPSC website below. All documents have been informed by TUSLA's Children First support documents, which are also available on the TUSLA website. Please find information in relation to the Child Safeguarding Statement Template information session. It is also possible to download the short information session on writing your Child Safeguarding Statement template that has been developed by CYPSC. See details outlined. The link to download the Word version of the Child Safeguarding Statement template is also below. The following leaflets and posters are also available for your use on the CYPSC website. This leaflet, Children First Information leaflet, outlines the responsibilities that individuals and groups have in relation to the Children First Act 2015 and revised Children First guidance. It provides links to training and support documents on the TUSLA website. Over the years, many organisations have outlined the difficulty of talking to parents when they have concerns about their children, and particularly if they have to report concerns to TUSLA. This leaflet was produced to help organisations explain to parents about the responsibilities that they as an organisation and all groups working with children have in relation to reporting. Importantly, it also outlines for parents the other safe practices they have, for example, recruiting people safely, staff having a code of behaviour about how they will positively engage with children, and consulting with young people about their activities. Groups can fill out their details and then give this leaflet to parents and carers at the beginning of a service or when a young person joins an activity. One of the specified procedures required by the Children First Act is a reporting procedure which outlines what groups need to do if they are concerned about a child's welfare or protection. We have produced a poster for organisations to use, which gives easy access to the telephone numbers for designated liaison persons and staff or volunteers. These numbers are the local duty social work team numbers and the local number for the Gardaí. The poster also again informs parents and carers about the responsibilities that their service has around Children First. For electronic versions of the leaflets and posters outlined above, please follow the following links. For hard copies of the posters and leaflets, you can also contact the CYPSC coordinator, whose details are outlined. As outlined earlier in the presentation, there is a universally available Introduction to Children First TUSLA e-learning program available on the TUSLA website. This e-learning is available through Irish. Children First documentation is also available in Irish on the TUSLA website. I hope this presentation has been helpful. For further information and support, please see links to the Children First Information and Advice Service in relation to your child safeguarding procedures and the TUSLA Child Safeguarding Statement Compliance Unit in relation to your child safeguarding statement. For any concerns in relation to a child protection issue, see the link which outlines the local TUSLA social work dedicated contact points for your area. Thank you for your attention.